Okay, you guys, this is a video on how to make a second low resolution terrain. The goal for this low resolution terrain is for the using with the terrain overlay technique where you're surrounding your course with one spline. So first I'm going to just show you how to set up that single spline that's going to encompass your entire course. The reason you need sort of an outer spline is so that you're not going to have any holes in your mesh where the ball would actually land on the Unity terrain. The ball is always going to land on or at least in the course of play for the most part, is going to land on a CourseForge mesh. The way we can do this without getting that Unity vertice error is basically by creating a low res layer. And so basically you've got your traditional rough layer. You're going to want to clone this so that your outer layer is sort of just a replica of your rough. And I called that rough low. But so you go in there and just choose clone and then change this to rough low. The changes I made though is I changed my spline creation meters per point to 50 and my grid fill to 6. What that does is if you look at the shaded wireframe here, you're going to see between holes, the area that's filling in with this outer spline is just 6-meter triangles. And in the end, or at least this edge is 6 meters. That's basically a low-res fill-in. The downside to it is it's going to allow terrain to poke through the mesh, but I'm going to show you how the second terrain is going to eliminate worrying about that. So I don't worry about anything coming through the mesh. As a note, you will also use that traditional rough around the holes like you would for any other course that you're doing. The reason you're going to want to have sort of a higher resolution and a lower resolution is that the higher resolution follows the contours of the course or the height map better, and so you're going to have better hills, whereas this lower resolution one's not going to have quite the contouring that you're going to get with the higher resolution meshes. So once you've outlined your entire course with this low res mesh and you've calculated your splines, you're going to see if you go to your terrain, we can hide this. So our main terrain, if we go click on terrain in the hierarchy, inspector, cogwheel, and then untick this word draw, you're going to see that the terrain goes away. Now there's no holes in my meshes, so the ball is still going to land and be in play. This terrain is just being hidden when it comes to play within Unity, so it doesn't have to be drawn by the CPU, GPU. And so we need to make a second low-res terrain that's basically identical to it, except it can be flat in the area where the meshes exist, or it can be lower than that. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to basically export the height map from our primary terrain. So you click on the cogwheel and you scroll down, and you choose Export Raw. And the depth is going to be bit 16 and the byte order is going to be Windows. You choose export. Now we have to save this somewhere in our project. I've made within my assets, I've made a folder called terrain backup, or Larry actually did that for me. And we go into terrain backup here and we're just going to save it something that we can find. So I'm going to call this primary underscore and then I just put the date usually. And then we're going to save that. Now that should show up on our project panel over here, but sometimes it does not show up right away. So it looks like it's not showing up right away. And so you have to just refresh your assets. So come up top here, choose assets, refresh, and then it's going to show up here. Now I'm going to save my project here at this point. So file, save scene. I'm not going to do it just because I don't want to overwrite my settings, but you're going to do save scene at this point because I'm going to open this in Photoshop, and sometimes when I open things in Photoshop it crashes the computer, and so we're going to go ahead and right click on this, and you can either choose open and it might automatically open in Photoshop, or you choose show in Explorer, and then you're going to right click on it and you can choose open with, and I'm going to open this in Photoshop. And like I said, it may crash your Unity or freeze your Unity. It just depends on your computer. I'm doing too much at the moment, so it'll probably crash. And I'll just have to reopen it. So you're going to see this is a 4097 by 4097 file. at 16 bits IBM PC. Choose OK. And then we're going to resave this. So remember, I want this to be lower resolution. I'm going to save this as a 512 resolution. So I'm going to change my image size here. And it's a power of 2 plus 1. So 4097 by 4097 is 4096 plus 1. I'm going to change it to 512 plus 1, which is 513. So you're going to see that's obviously lower resolution. And then we're going to choose Save As. I don't want to overwrite that primary terrain export. We're going to save it as a raw file. And we're going to call this secondary and then underscore 512 and save. And that's in the same folder that we had before in the project panel. And the byte order on this is going to be IBM PC. You have to have, I believe, something that can open 16-bit files for this to work correctly. So a more up-to-date version of Photoshop. I don't know if GIMP can handle 16-bit files, probably. Then we're going to close this, but I don't need to save the changes to that original file. So we'll see if Unity crashed out on me. Yep. So I'm going to pause here and reopen Unity. Okay, so I'm back into Unity here, and now I'm going to show you how to create that secondary terrain. So you're going to go to your Game Object menu here, and you're going to choose 3D Object, Terrain. Now right away I'm going to rename this. So right click on this new terrain that's made. It should be at the bottom of the hierarchy. And we're going to rename it. My only worry here is that somehow could CourseForge recognize this secondary terrain and want to start drawing splines on it. So I just rename it as fast as I possibly can here. And it probably doesn't matter, to be honest, but I don't want it to screw up anybody's project. So now we're going to go to this outer terrain. And it's going to have to match the settings of your primary terrain. So just write these down. You know, my project here, it's 1500 by 1500. And my height is 38.391. And that's all I need to know here. And then so let's go to this outer terrain and let's import that low-res height map. We can change the settings here. So resolution is going to be, for me, it's going to be, it's 1500 by 1500. And the height was 38.391. All right, and it's already at this 513, but when you import your map, it will change those accordingly. So I'm going to go to Assets here, find my file. That was that secondary 512, and we're going to open that. And so that's going to import this height map. You can always change these settings later in terms of the terrain size and the height, but we're going to go ahead and import that at bit 16 and Windows. And so now you're going to see I've got a second terrain here. So let's go hide our primary terrain. So click Terrain, go into Inspector, and make sure the draw is unticked. Now you're going to see I have this secondary low-res terrain. Now it's still got all the tears here in the mesh, and we're going to control that. And then all we have to do is add our satellite overlay. So let's first deal with the tears in the mesh. You're going to... I guess before I navigate there, let's go to the outer terrain and show you my settings as well on pixel error. I've got the pixel error at 5. This can be anywhere from 3 to 5. That's just how you're going to get some terrain popping. And at 5, far enough in the distance, my terrain is not real hilly. You may want to set it to 3, but if I'm at 5, it's going to be less intensive for the computer. So I've got that at 5 and my base map distance at 1000. Some other users can chime in here on the forum in terms of what they do there. But let's first deal with the popping of the terrain through. So we're going to add a texture. I've got a texture that Larry provided. It's this blue texture. You can download any fluorescent or make any fluorescent texture yourself and put this in and click Add here. Now since it's the first swatch, it's going to basically fill in everywhere this bright blue, and so we're going to get rid of that by basically lowering the terrain within the mesh. Now if you get careless, say we just lower it here, let's go to just lower. You get careless with your lowering, you know, you're going to have a tear. You can't see this here because it's not gray. Oh, I was on the wrong terrain here, so make sure Yeah, that wasn't a good thing there. Make sure I didn't do too many. Nope, I didn't do any of those. Make sure you're on the outer terrain when you're doing this. And you're going to lower your, when you're doing a lowering around the edge, you have to be careful with it. Because in the end you want this to go away, but if you lower this too much, then there's going to be this gap under your mesh. So hopefully you'll be able to see that. But there's going to be a gap under here. And so you don't want to really do that. You're going to have to be a little more subtle here when you get to the edge. Turn your opacity down and maybe just one click. Okay, nice. So just one, soft clicks here. And then there's going to be potentially gaps here, which you'll be able to better assess in game or when I actually put the satellite overlay back here. But you can be pretty liberal inside the course here. So I'm going to turn this all the way up to brush size 100, opacity 100, and I'm going to lower this. And I just happen to know the base of my water is about 16 here. So I'm going to just put that 16 and just blow through the entire inner part of the course. And there all my tears are going away. And then, like I said, you're going to just have to work finer detail towards the edges. You're going to shrink your brush size and then work a little more careful. So that's even lower here. That's like 14 for me, this water here, as we come out. And so it might take you about 10 minutes to go around the whole outside of the course. But like I said, you're going to want to get a little softer as you go around here, and just do these kind of subtle ticks. So that way you don't have too many gaps. It doesn't really matter. It's out of bounds for me, but you'll get some people complaining that they can see through your mesh, or a ball might accidentally roll under the mesh, and you just don't want to cause issues, but it's going to be out of bounds in my course. So now once you've got all these tears gone, the only thing you've got left to do is add in your satellite overlay. You're going to go back to the paintbrush, and I'm going to get rid of this blue, and we're going to change it to our satellite overlay. And for me right now, it's tiling at 15. Remember, this is now going to be your course dimensions. For me, it's 1500 by 1500. And now we're golden. So we've got a low res outer terrain. Now look at this. Let me move this camera here and check out this. Just this view right here. That's not it. I want to align this with the view. And then you'll just check out your stats, and look at that, 1.8 tries. I mean, that's awesome. You can take other scene views here. Look at this, is the long view, so this might be the max, might be 2.6 or something. 2 million there. So some of that just depends on your setting, but really this is a nice way to get a low res terrain. It's less drawing for the computer, and hopefully this will work well for you guys utilizing the terrain overlay technique. Oh, one last thing before you leave. The outer terrain, I forgot. I need to put some physics on it. So at the bottom here, terrain collider, I think that's only going to show up, in the cogwheel. Terrain collider, material physics, I'm going to change this to rough. And that should do it. All right. Hopefully you guys learned something there. Enjoy.